What's up, fellas? So we wanted to get a little discussion in on an event that took over sort of the sports consciousness over the weekend. While there was legitimate UFC action going on, there was actually some legitimate boxing matches going on, but instead the world was focused on the 50 something Mike Tyson, and Roy Jones Jr. in some sort of exhibition 8 round, 2 minutes per round, with a co-main event featuring Jake Paul and former NBA star Nate Robinson. Um, there are so many different angles that we can talk about to this, but before we get into some of the nuts and bolts of things, I just want your impressions on the card overall. Like, what did you think of this as one, a sporting event, two, a spectacle, three, just a piece of entertainment? What was your impression?
I've had John Nutt on the Fight Business podcast a couple times now, ringmaster of Fight Circus. And I felt compelled to reach out to him and be like, are you going to, sue here? Because here's another Fight Circus. Somebody's clearly stealing your gimmick over here when you have you have the boxing matches that you did with full-on concerts in between, right? Like, we were talking live performances from who all performed?
So Wiz Khalifa, YG, Snoop. I still don't know who St. John is, so that's still a thing. I've no clue who he is, but he did something as well. And I know I missed one other concert because I went to do something else.
French Montana.
Yes, yeah.
Yep,
French
right.
Montana doing. He did like one of two of his guest verses and like a couple hooks or something. He doesn't really have a whole lot of solo songs that are noteworthy, but that's a whole nother story. Unless you get into like the Coke Boys mixtapes, and we're not going there. This is a combat sports show. So, so Pat, you did enjoy the whole thing as a spectacle, at least.
I liked the idea. I've been watching a lot of Great British Breaking Show, so bear with me here. I liked the idea. I liked the design. Was poorly executed. That's how I feel about it.
Well, fair enough. Matt, I mean, granted, we were in contact the entire time that the card was going on, so I kind of know, but the people watching don't. So share with me your thoughts on what was running through your mind watching a lot of this.
I thoroughly enjoyed my evening with this event because I expected a circus. Right? I expected a more polished circus without telling me directly this is a circus, right? So I loved the presentation. I thought the presentation was really clean. I loved the ring setup with the lights seemingly like 6 feet above the guys. I love the layout. I love the screens all around the arena. I thought all of that was super dope. I didn't mind the musical performances as much because, again, I knew that this was a different type of event. If you try to put in musical acts in between every UFC fight, boy, I'm throwing something across the room. I would be livid. Be like, no, just get to the next fight. Let's get this crap over with.
I guess you got beef with that DJ that's always playing those, Limp Bizkit remixes in between fights in the arena.
See, I think that's a big part of it too. The type of music being played. So I know, Matt and I are not going to complain about too much hip hop. That's something we're probably not going to be too upset with. You play new metal. Yes, I'm highly upset with you, especially in 2020. We're still doing this, but that's another story. And
look, it was we spent $50 on this thing, right? So what was I really getting my money for? Would I've been satisfied with $50 for Tyson and Jones? Maybe, but I got some musical acts that I actually don't mind in between. I was like, all right, it's kind of cool. It kind of pays for itself, right? How much would those guys' concerts have been individually? So yeah, you got to calculate all these kind of things in your mind. It was worth it for me at the end of the day.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I mean, the thing is, we knew what to expect going in. Now the length of the musical performances definitely threw me for a loop.
Yeah, I didn't know they were getting full sets. Yeah,
yeah. So when they had Wiz Khalifa on there, he did the song that's on the UFC games. Still Wiz, I think is the name of it. So when that song was going, I'm like, oh, I like the song, and nod in my head. And then the next song in Black and Yellow comes on, like, oh, so he's doing another one. And then that ended, and then he's doing a third song. I was like, oh, they're getting actual sets. Like this is a real performance that they're really putting on here. So that threw me for a loop. But at the same time, I wasn't mad. Like I did not turn this on expecting to see, a purely legitimate boxing match. I mean, like Jake Paul was the co-main event. So really, what were we expecting? I'm sorry, like it did what it was supposed to do. It entertained me, and considering that the UFC had a legitimate card going on, the Anthony Smith and Devin Clark event, originally supposed to be Curtis Blades and Derek Lewis. I mean, that was a legitimate card with real fights, but we've seen the same product from the UFC every week since June, I think, since they've had a week off. The time to break up the monotony a little bit there. I was happy to take a break from focusing so seriously on a UFC card and instead turn my attention to something that I didn't quite have to really invest myself emotionally or mentally in. And I think that was a well-needed distraction. It was a well-needed break. And then really to the point where I had the UFC on a second screen that had no volume. Like, sorry, I'm nodding my head to YG. I'm listening to Nate Robinson's corner give him the worst non-advice the world has ever heard on his way to getting laid out. That's what I'm doing instead of paying attention to what Brendan Fitzgerald and Paul Felder were talking about as far as legitimate ranked fights are concerned. But anyway, to the fight itself, we'll get to the Jake Paul Nate Robinson fight in a second here. But the main event, Tyson and Jones. Did you score it? And if so, how did you score it? Do you think a draw was appropriate?
I tried to score it a little bit, but honestly, there was, what do you expect with guys their age? And they both were clearly gassed very, very early on. Like we got what we expected. I personally had it for Tyson, but then again, I could easily have given it to Jones. I'm not mad about a draw, though, because, again, we knew what to expect. And anyone who expected this not to be a draw based on what the Athletic Commission, the California State Athletic Commission said was going to happen, go back and look, because they said, there's not going to be a winner. It's not going to happen. So, I don't know. I didn't try and score it too much. I wasn't intently, trying to point rounds, especially because I knew what the overall result was going to be in the end. I give the slight nod to Tyson, but again, I don't know. It was tough.
Matt, how did you score it?
I didn't score it. I mean, I was just watching, observing as a sparring match, because that's what this was, right? You think back to when this first, like Pat hinted at, when this thing first got announced, Andy Foster said this is going to be a thing to where you can see these two legends moving around, and that's pretty much it. And that's what we got for the most part. It was very apparent as soon as you saw Tyson just go charge in and go to the body repeatedly instead of going upstairs when he normally would have done his normal and then come up with upstairs with the hook. He was doing that, but the hook was going to the body every time. So it's like, okay, what are we doing here? We're having a very friendly sparring match where, yeah, they were hitting each other for real to the body a lot, but I mean, you could see that, yeah, they weren't trying to really, really knock each other out or anything like that. So I took it for face value for what it was. I just enjoyed it. I was enjoying the nostalgia of it. I wasn't getting wrapped up in determining who was going to win this sparring match.
Yeah, I think I'm with you guys on that one. This is something I just didn't bother scoring. It's kind of like, what's the point? We knew with the odd rules that were put in place by the California State Athletic Commission. I don't think we got any real clarification on whether or not the no knockout thing was real. Toward the fight day, I was hearing conflicting things about the truth in that, but still we knew
make some sales.
Yeah, we knew what this was about. It was just these two guys who are 20 years removed from their primes, just going in there and kind of goofing off with one another. That was the point of this. So no point in breaking out the pen and paper and putting 10s and 9s down for any reason. But I guess now the question is, because Tyson, immediately afterward was high on adrenaline. Well, literally high too. He did say he smoked like before coming out to the ring, so probably a bad choice of words on my part. but Tyson was very adamant about jumping back in the ring as soon as possible. I know today, I believe it was, or yesterday, he stated that he'd like to fight once every couple of months, and looks like he's targeting a rematch with Evander Holyfield, who tweeted today a picture of him with some boxing gloves on and covered in sweat, saying something to the effect like, win or let's get this work, or something of that nature. You get what I'm talking about here. Can't remember the quote right off the top of my head. Are you tuning in if and when that happens?
Maybe. I mean, part of my biggest issue here is the price for what you're getting. Because again, I get what you're talking about, knowing what it was, looking at it from an entertainment aspect. I guess me personally, right, I also watched Fight Circus, which was that to the extreme. That was way over in nowhere land compared to like traditional martial arts. This was in between that, much closer to traditional martial arts, sparring, stuff like that. If I'm able to, if it's a good price, less than $50 probably at this point, and if there's nothing else on that's conflicting, right? As long as they're not going head to head with like the McGregor Poirier card or something like that, then yeah, I'd probably tune in again and give it another shot. But I'm not as, I've got to get this one as I was with Jones versus Tyson.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I think like if they continue to do these sorts of events, they won't do as well as this one did, because everybody knows like the game is giving up now. Like there was some mystique of like, we had the conflicting reports out there, like you talked about, right? Where it's, are they going to actually be knocking out, or like, is that against the rules? Like, what's really going to happen here? Well, we saw it played out, and we saw what the game was, right? So they can't continue to do this and expect a lot of people to tune in, especially like Pat said, if there's other events going on where there's real competition. Now, they can drag people in if they put legitimate undercard fights. If they put a legitimate title fight under that, which obviously won't happen because the sanctioning bodies that be are going to, want their piece of the pie, like whether it be WBC or whatever have you, like they won't put their champions on there. I don't believe. But I mean, if something like that were to possibly happen, then yeah, you would tune in for that. But there's just all sorts of crazy things that, these cards can do, I think, to make interest. But will it have that same like mystique, I guess, so to speak, as this one did? I don't believe so. And I just don't want it to be a regular thing either. Even though like as the final rounds were coming up in this fight, I was sitting there like in the last 2 or 3 rounds, I was like, please, like Mike, don't like flip and like actually knock Roy out. I don't want to see that. Right. I just get through the end of the fight. Like 7th round, I was like, hurry up. Nobody get hurt. Like I didn't want to see anybody get hurt. And it's weird to say that when you're watching combat sports, right? It's like, I just want both of these guys to get through this moment, complete the moment, hug each other, take the pictures in the back, celebrate a fun night for what it was. I don't want to see one of these old ass dudes who are not fighting for real get seriously hurt.
It's a fair statement, but I want to touch on something else that you said in there, Matt. So saying it's something that you don't want to see too often. Define too often, because I think this can, every few months, they can put something together that I think a lot of people might show interest in. You don't necessarily have to stack it with names like Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. You can find, another Jake Paul. You can find another, say Ron Artest wants to defend the integrity of the NBA against Jake Paul. You're going to watch it like we all are. So I do think there are different avenues, and you go like more the celebrity boxing avenue. There's plenty of cannon fodder there. There are plenty of people who used to be famous 10 minutes ago that want to get a piece of that back. Granted, I don't want him to stoop as low as having like Kato Kalin or something jumping in there. I don't want to see anything like that, but still there is a market for that. I think you can put something together like that. And also considering the bit of popularity that BKFC has been able to garner by pulling in names of yesteryear in MMA who didn't stand out in the mainstream world. Considering what they've been able to do and generate some interest, I think you can find enough people to generate more interest than a Thiago Alves or whoever else you can think of that only rings a bell in MMA, but was able to get some eyeballs thrown in BKFC's direction. So there's something to it. I don't think it's necessarily the healthiest thing to have out there in the sporting landscape, but if you are a combat sports fan, you already have a screw loose, and this kind of plays right into our most depraved and just basest instincts. So shut up and take my money, I guess. I feel like I need to take a shower now. The aforementioned Jake Paul and Nate Robinson fight, I do want to discuss that briefly because that is probably the most memorable thing from the card. Just Nate Robinson got posterized, just absolutely annihilated. My initial impression of that was that, one, just being an elite athlete does not mean that you will be able to fight. You have to have fighting skills. And second, whoever was training Nate Robinson did him a horrible disservice. I don't think he spent a single round sparring at all. Like that was a travesty. Does anyone want to disagree with me and prove themselves wrong here?
Not real quick. My only thing on that is if you put a guy in a boxing ring against a guy who has virtually no experience versus a guy who's been training for a couple of years now, relatively seriously, results are going to be as expected. And that's what we saw here. Yeah, I 100% agree. Whoever trained Nate, quote unquote, trained him. Nah, don't ever do that again. Like find another profession or whatever you want to call it. Because that was terrible.
Yeah. No, it was awful. And make sure you like and subscribe and don't sign up with Nate Robinson's trainers if you want to get into boxing. I think that's really the main takeaway of this whole video.
Jeez, like, man, you're talking about devoid of the concept of defense. It just stuck his chin out and ran head first into every punch that was thrown his way. Like, good Lord. That was pretty bad. That was pretty damn bad. So all right, who's gonna go out there and place their name next to Jake Paul against Conor McGregor? Who's gonna do it? What's up, Pat? You in?
Nah, man.
Lying like shit. You in? I mean, I honestly would not be surprised to see like the Dylan Dennis fight actually happen. That wouldn't shock me one bit. Bellator tends to let their people kind of roam free in the combat sport landscape. I can definitely see them using this as a promotional tool for them. But we just can't get rid of the Paul brothers, can we? They're just stuck around, and with this, that's it.
We're stuck with them, unfortunately. But I mean, listen, if they're going to take it seriously and show some skill, I'll be okay with it, I guess. Somewhat, maybe.
I'll never be okay with it ever.
It's like that burnt piece of food that's stuck to the pan that you just can't get off no matter how hard you scrape.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
All right. Well,
it's all trash.
It is all trash. And we are trash for talking about it. So like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends, and peace.